The wrench in his hand was still greasy from the morning's work when the doors of the grand ballroom burst open and 6 armed men stormed in, and not one person in that glittering crowd of billionaires and socialites noticed that the quiet maintenance worker kneeling by the broken chandelier switch used to be called Ghost by men who feared him more than death itself. If you believe in second chances, in quiet heroes who ask for nothing, hit that like button right now, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this with someone who needs a reminder that good still wins, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so you never miss a story like this one. Daniel Cole had not touched a rifle in 4 years. He had traded body armor for a tool belt, and instead of extracting hostages from war zones, he spent his days fixing leaking pipes and flickering lights in the Whitmore Tower, a glass skyscraper owned by one of the richest men in the country. Daniel was 38 years old, a widower, and the father of a 7-year-old girl named Ellie who believed her dad was simply a handyman who liked fixing things because it made people happy. She did not know about the 2 tours in Afghanistan, the black operations that never made headlines, or the night 4 years ago when Daniel had watched his best friend die in his arms during an extraction gone wrong, an event that broke something in him so deeply that he walked away from the only life he had ever known and chose to disappear into anonymity, raising his daughter alone in a small apartment on the edge of the city. Money was tight. The Whitmore Tower job paid barely enough to keep the lights on, but Daniel never complained. Every evening he came home smelling of machine oil and cleaning solution, and every evening Ellie ran to him with a hand-drawn picture or a story from school, and for those few hours he allowed himself to feel like an ordinary man living an ordinary life, far from the ghosts of his past. The wealthy tenants of the building barely looked at him. To them he was invisible, a man in gray coveralls who fixed things and disappeared. That invisibility, that quiet insignificance he had built for himself, was about to become the very thing that would save nearly 200 lives. The gala that evening was the social event of the year, hosted by billionaire real estate mogul Nathaniel Cross to celebrate the opening of the tower's new penthouse suites. The guest list read like a who's who of finance, politics, and old money, women in flowing gowns and men in tailored suits sipping champagne beneath crystal chandeliers, while somewhere below the marble floors, Daniel had been called in to fix an electrical fault in the security panel, a routine job that would normally take 20 minutes. He was still crouched beside the open panel when the first gunshot echoed through the lobby, followed by screaming, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots moving in formation, a sound Daniel's body remembered before his mind even processed it. 6 men in tactical gear swept into the ballroom, weapons raised, faces covered, moving with the precision of people who had trained together for years. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with cold eyes named Victor Kane, announced that no one would be hurt if everyone remained calm and did exactly as instructed, but the tremor beneath his controlled voice told a different story to anyone trained to hear it, and Daniel was exactly that kind of trained. Within seconds, Daniel understood this was not a robbery. The men moved with purpose toward the private elevator leading to Nathaniel Cross's penthouse vault, and the guests, nearly 200 of them, were being herded to the floor as leverage, human insurance against interference from outside. Daniel could have stayed hidden. He was a maintenance worker crouched behind a service panel, easily overlooked, and every rational voice in his head told him to wait for the professionals, to protect himself for Ellie's sake, because if something happened to him, she would have no one left in this world. But then his eyes found her, a young woman in a navy dress near the back of the crowd, hands raised and trembling, and something in her terrified expression reminded him so violently of the night he lost his friend that his body simply refused to stay still any longer. Buried instincts, for years dormant but never truly gone, surged back to life in an instant. Moving in the shadows behind the bar and along the service corridors he knew from months of maintenance work, Daniel began doing what he used to do best, gathering information silently, counting hostiles, identifying weak points, memorizing the layout of exits the gunmen didn't know existed. He disabled 2 security cameras the intruders were using to track guest movement, buying himself invisibility within invisibility. When one of the gunmen wandered into the service hallway to check a noise, Daniel moved with a speed and precision that belonged to another life entirely, subduing the man silently and taking his radio, learning in real time that the team's real target was not jewelry or cash, but a decades-old encrypted data drive in Cross's private vault containing information that could collapse 3 multinational corporations overnight. With the guests still held at gunpoint in the ballroom, Daniel understood he had only minutes before the situation turned fatal, because men desperate enough to attempt something this bold rarely planned on leaving witnesses. Using the maintenance tunnels only a handful of building employees knew about, he circled behind the remaining gunmen positioned near the vault floor, and one by one, using training the military had spent years drilling into him, he began neutralizing the threat, never firing a shot that could be heard above the panicked murmurs upstairs, moving like the ghost his old unit once nicknamed him. Victor Kane, sensing something had gone wrong when his men stopped responding, began to panic, pressing his weapon against a hostage's temple and shouting for whoever was interfering to reveal themselves. Daniel stepped out from the shadows, hands raised but eyes steady, and offered himself as the only target Kane needed. For a moment, the room held its breath, the woman in the navy dress crying silently, the crowd frozen in terrified stillness, as two men who had once walked very different paths now stood face to face in a battle that would decide who walked out of that building. What followed was not the movie-style shootout people might imagine, but a brief, brutal, almost silent struggle in which years of training collided with desperation, ending with Kane disarmed and restrained just as the first sirens echoed from the streets below. By the time police stormed the building, it was over. Daniel stood quietly to the side, a maintenance worker once again, coveralls torn, saying nothing about what he had done, ready to disappear back into anonymity as he always had. But Nathaniel Cross, the billionaire whose life and legacy had just been saved, refused to let that happen. Later, when reporters asked him who the mysterious man was who had stopped the attack single-handedly, Cross said simply that the real story wasn't about a hero with a hidden past, but about a father who had spent years being underestimated and overlooked, only to prove that the quietest people often carry the heaviest courage. Daniel didn't want fame. He didn't want money, though Cross insisted on providing for Ellie's education and a home that no longer left them counting every dollar. What Daniel wanted was simple, to go home that night, hold his daughter, and let her believe, for one more evening, that her father was just a man who liked fixing things. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you that ordinary people can carry extraordinary courage, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Before we go, drop a comment below with the word "ghost" if you believe quiet heroes deserve to be seen, and let us know which part of Daniel's story touched you the most. Because sometimes the bravest people in the room are the ones nobody ever notices, until the moment the world needs them most.